Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, John Teixeira. Just kidding, I'm Kyle. Sitting next to John. We are back this week, and welcome to We Are TPM. As Thanksgiving approaches, we are talking turkey, but not the kind you roast. Today's episode is all about identifying problematic tenants, the ones who gobble up your time and money. This episode is called How to Know If Your Tenant is a Turkey. If you want some help on figuring out if you got a turkey or a chicken or whatever you want to call it, give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com. John, we got a turkey on the table for Turkey Day. Turkey.
I love it. This is such a good intro. I love this
Thanksgiving
episode right
themed,
now.
right?
I love it. I love it. We were a little behind the ball on the Halloween one, weren't we?
Yeah.
But we're way ahead of things on this one. I love it.
We had to be ahead on
We got to thank our producer, Steve Casillo, for this one. He came up with the idea for this episode, and I love it. So
You're supposed to take credit.
Well, no,
You're giving credit where credit
old
is due.
school.
No, you're supposed
I'm
to
old
take
school.
it.
Nope, I'm old school. I give it out when somebody else has a great idea. So let's get into this. So how do we identify turkey tenants? The first one that we came up with is late rent payments. That's easy, right? That's like, duh.
We can also talk about tips to turn turkeys into respectful renters. So do we need a turkey day themed, what's a ham? Ham? I like the ham on Turkey Day. It's better.
We can go ham on turkey.
Yeah. The ham's a good tenant. Turkey's the gobble gobble one. Never mind. We're sticking to just the turkeys.
Are we going to do this episode or not?
I think so. So late rent payments, they're great, right?
Late rent payments are definitely a good, easy way to identify a turkey tenant, right? Like,
I think
are they paying their rent or not?
It could be the first sign that you get. Hopefully you get a sign before that. But struggling to pay rent on time disrupts your cash flow, right? So this is the first one.
So we've talked about this before. We have episodes about this specifically. And the important thing here is really simple. Have a system in place for collections that gets you toward eviction as quickly as you can get there, right? Communicate all the way through that system clearly with your tenants, right? And don't deviate from it, period.
Yep. That's
it. That easy.
A strict, objective, transparent, late payment policy.
There you go.
Where it doesn't change, and it's consistent. Consistent's probably the biggest one. So everybody knows what it is. You repeat what it is. You repeatedly tell them what it is, right? And are transparent about it. And if you're accepting or talking about payment arrangements or late payment dates, don't change the policy for it, right? Be transparent about when things are going to happen, what the cause and effect is. So
that's it.
Because otherwise, you just get what, John? Just get our next point, right?
Excuse after excuse.
Yep. There you go. Boom. Another hallmark of a turkey.
What a transition.
Excuse.
Man, that was a brilliant transition. You went from a brilliant introduction to a really bad introduction to a brilliant transition. You're like on fire.
You couldn't have just given me great, then mid, and then back to great. He went
You're like
great,
on
bad,
fire.
Great. Okay. That averages out to good.
It averages out to great, actually.
Technically.
Yep.
I guess if the other two cancel
fire,
out.
Really
Flag
bad,
on the play.
fire. Flag on the play.
His penalties offset, and then I got great. Okay.
We're both getting sidetracked a little bit here, aren't we?
No,
I'm sorry.
We have a never-ending list of excuses. Right? Oh, no, those are the turkeys with their excuse after excuse for tenant payments. This is huge for tenant collections is one time it's an excuse. We take the old approach of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I can't even speak it. Fool me, never get fooled again.
Well, I think the point here is when you have a tenant that gives you excuse after excuse, it shows you their character, right? They're not diligent enough about the details of their life. So they're also not going to be diligent enough about paying rent, about doing the things they need to do to take care of the home and so forth, right? People that have excuse after excuse think that they can get away with things by, we call it BSing you, right? And so it just tells you the character of the person that's in front of you, really.
Yeah, and honestly, just how much you can trust arrangements, right? Because it's hard to make arrangements with people who don't honor their own word, right? It's big, so it's like, well, I'm going to pay on the 8th. Like you paid on the 8th, and then you're late again. All right, I'm going to pay on the 12th. It sucks that you're late, but if you say to me you're going to pay on the 12th and you actually pay on the 12th, it's a lot different than on the 12th. You're like, well, 18th now, buddy, and then on the 18th, you're like, well, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When we ask people for payment plans, we ask them for reasonable, doable payment plans, right? That's the exact verbiage that we use. Give me a payment plan that I can accept, that is reasonable and doable.
Well, and it's always it's commonly the opposite. Like, can I get a payment plan? What payment plan options do I have? It's like, well, I don't want to present you something that you're also not going to pay. The payment plan option that I have is what our lease says. So pay me on the 1st. Don't ever pay me after the 1st.
My payment plan is give it all to me now.
Yeah, so outside of that suggestion, if you need something else, you need to present it in and the way we say it is a realistic way that you will stick to. So don't go over what you think and then short me. I'd rather you short your payment plan and then pay over, right? It's a psychology thing, but it's true because you miss one of those payment plans.
Over.
Yeah, it's done. Doing? Now you got a lie. And people like to use the testament that I didn't lie. Things just happened, and it's like, well.
And that's true. So
let's
go back to
a definitive statement that didn't occur. So.
No, that you're right. And if we go back to this excuse after excuse tenant we're talking about, things happen to people, right? Things have happened to you and I, bad things.
Oh yeah.
And we've had to tell people something that we didn't want to tell them, but you own it. You do it. You say, look, I couldn't pay this. I'll get this to you when, or whatever, or I couldn't do this and I'll do it here at this time. Or I can't do this any longer, whatever. Just own it, be upright, upfront about it, and there's no need to constantly give excuse after excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more just...
How long would you be married?
Facts are the best time to deal with.
How long would you be married if you told your wife every single Tuesday that you couldn't take out the trash for this reason or that reason? Well, my foot hurts this week. And then next week it's like, well, it's raining outside. And then the week after that it's like, well, the dogs need, kids need my attention, so I didn't have time to do it. And then, I mean, how long would you be married, right? Like, it's only trash, but your wife's going to look at you and go like, you are a piece of crap. This has nothing to do with trash at this point. It has everything to do about your character. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know your wife wouldn't put up with it.
I don't know how long you'd be married either. I don't know if you'd make it there, though. You must have had you got a lope or something to make it there with that kind of... I'm just kidding.
I'm just trying to make an analogy that people
basically set clear expectations, stick to the lease terms, and just avoid being overly flexible with unreliable. Unreliable means you've proven yourself not to be trustworthy.
What's another way we identify turkey tenants, Kyle?
We ignore them. Just kidding.
We ignore them.
Just kidding. They tend to ignore lease terms. It's one of the a big sign, like day one they show up to get keys from you. They know you're gonna be there. They're not even trying to hide something like this, and they bring their dog with them, and it's like, well, you don't have a dog on the lease. It's like, oh yeah, this one's my son's daughter, my daughter-in-law's brother's dog or something. It's always something that I'm just watching for today while I'm meeting you with the keys to this house. So, or having unapproved guests, these things, you lease to one person and you show up to give keys and there's a whole family of 8. It's like, well, it's not that you wouldn't have approved them
they weren't authorized.
Yeah,
we didn't know they were
here. You
here.
need to be on the lease. That's part of it. So
we had a tenant recently that told us that they weren't smoking in a unit, right? And I show up to find somebody living in the home answers the door that I don't even know, that's not even on the lease. He lets me in and shows me that, no, they don't smoke in there, while there's a lit cigarette sitting in the ashtray in the living room.
Yeah.
And he says, well, this is the only place I smoke.
Well, and ironically, this is in follow-up to me going there and having...
And you had the same experience.
No, different. They opened the door smoking a cigarette and told me that they don't smoke in the unit. I'm like, are we in the same realm of reality right now? Is this a dimensional thing? Like, I am standing next to you. I'm standing in the unit with you smoking. So it's currently occurring. I don't know.
Can I take a picture?
It's just a turkey, I guess. So
they're definitely turkeys.
Those are the hard ones to deal with because they don't even how do you deal with lease violations that are in different realm, another dimension, right? So I don't know, man. But that one's a big one. Ignoring the rules.
This next one's interesting.
Not taking care of the landscaping.
People don't think of this one.
But we got to give tips. What if they're ignoring the rules? What do we do? Just check on the unit. Yeah. Well, this is why you conduct regular property inspections. You communicate very directly and very transparently. Ironically, the story we just told, both occasions they knew we were coming to check for smoking. So
and they didn't care.
You can't help everybody, I guess. When issues arise, prevent small rule breaking from escalating. Because sometimes once they see that they can get away with one thing, they're like, oh, okay, well. My landlord doesn't care.
Here's what I would say. Here's what I would pull out of everything that you just said, Kyle, is clear communication. So communicate clearly what you expect of everybody involved in your tenancy, right, including your tenants, and communicate clearly what the outcome is going to be, what you expect them to do and what the outcome is going to be if they do it or don't do it. And don't be afraid to ask questions of your tenants. So, for instance, we get other neighbors that will call us and complain, or maybe we have a fourplex and it's the upstairs unit that's complaining about this or that. Sometimes you have people that are quote unquote Karens, and sometimes they have legitimate concerns, and sometimes you don't know which one it is. So don't hesitate to reach directly out to that tenant and say, hey, we are getting a report of this, and this is a lease violation. Is this happening? It's fine. Let them lie to you. It's okay. You got to start the conversation. You got to let them know that somebody's concerned, somebody's making you aware of it immediately, and let them know about it. And don't be afraid to do it. Don't sit there and, try to decide, how should we do this? What should we do? Should we ask them this? Should we just show up? And no, that's all a bunch of crap. Is that how you would handle your dating life, right? Would you, no, you go straight. You stay straight and on the level. Well, communicate clearly.
It's a good segue into our next one is, you can think that the small rule breaking won't escalate. But a lot of times ignoring the rules can lead to our next turkey identifier, which is maintenance avoidance. Because, delay maintenance reporting issues, and neglect maintenance and these things, and then sometimes won't even let you know about it because they won't tell you about a small leak or something that's damaging the property because they know they're ignoring the rules and have a pet or smoking in the unit or whatever, and don't want anybody to come in, so they don't even tell you. So these things can stack on top of each other to have a problem. So
you should be somewhat concerned if you have a house that you never hear from the tenant on. They pay their rent on time. You're happy. You're not spending any money on repairs. 2-3 years goes by and you have never heard from this tenant and they just keep paying. It is a possibility that they are taking very good care of the home and they are the best tenants on the planet. It's a more likely possibility, what you just said, that they don't want you anywhere near the home for some reason.
Yeah, and there's even if there isn't a problem, it could also be the reason too. So
they could just be the type of people that don't want anybody around. That's not the point. This is a possibility. This maintenance avoidance issue is a possibility, and one of the yellow flags to that is that you never hear from them. They never put in any maintenance requests in a long period of time. And
small problems in rental maintenance can turn into big ones.
Yep.
If left unaddressed for long periods of time.
Or allowing a tenant to address it incorrectly, right?
Yeah, that's true. A lot of times they'll weigh the cost of, all right, this small repair, should find some cheap contractor and do it myself and pay them myself, because I know if I let my manager in here or my landlord in here, they're going to charge me for this really expensive damage that I did, and I don't want them to see, or something like that. Or they might kick you out, or I don't know. Depends on what the turkey identifier is there, right? What's our next one, Joan?
Well, guests kind of goes along with something we already talked about, so we could probably whiz through this one.
High turnover of guests.
Yeah, we talked about unauthorized occupants, and this kind of falls in that same category high turnover of guests. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, unless you live next door to your unit, it's hard to know.
Yeah, this is really one of those tips where, or one of the things you can do to help this is really just putting something in your lease that's really, there's a lot of things in leases that you're not really going to enforce. It's just ammo in case you need it, right? Like a length of stay for guests, because it's hard to say when there's unauthorized occupants that live there and they claim that they're just guests. Well, if there's not a limit to the guest or to defining a guest versus an occupant in your lease, then you can have some problems enforcing that. That's really what it comes down to. So 14 days is the kind of rule of thumb there.
That's ours. That's what we use. We also limit the number of cars that you can have to the number of drivers that occupy the home and so forth. So those kinds of things you want to make sure are in your lease so that later on when you have a problem, these kinds of problems, you have something that you can use in your lease to enforce it.
Okay, well, our next one is what's something that shows its ugly head in identifying a turkey when they're ignoring the rules and doing maintenance avoidance and you don't even know it yet?
They refuse property inspections.
Yes. Refusal of property inspections, and then find out that they don't really have the right to refuse property inspections. That doesn't mean they don't attempt, and that is a true sign of avoiding a property inspection is usually hiding problems. Most people who are taking great care of the home want the property inspections so that they can get confirmation that get documentation of how the condition of the home is, I should say. But unauthorized pets, property damage, and the biggest one is cleanliness that the people are trying to hide. Cleanliness or things like smoking cigarettes inside the unit, those types of things. So.
Yep.
So what do we do about this? Just make sure it's in your
lease.
Don't
allow them to refuse property inspections.
Yeah, make sure it's in your lease that you have to abide by inspection and let them in to stay compliant. So. And when you do that, what do you generally get, John? Our next point?
Negative communication.
Negative communication. It's not positive. It's generally negative.
Sometimes translates into a 1-star review.
That's a turkey tenant identifier. Negative communication.
Yes.
Do we get very negative communication? Is there people who have called us turkeys or maybe less positive names?
More appropriately, rude, unresponsive, or overly demanding. That is a good way of characterizing poor communication.
I feel like you just had a flashback of all the
I had
negative communications that have come your way.
I had one. I had somebody tell me to eat a bag of something that we will never forget. That was definitely poor communication, but it was extremely memorable, and
before we even responded,
still talk about it to this day.
Positive communication, so it's even funnier almost. So, red flag or turkey flag, turkey identifier being rude, unresponsive, demanding. A lot of times, people, the biggest one I'd call negative is when they live off this misconception that you work for them and you owe them everything in the world. So, because we do.
Well. Okay, so to that point, I mean, you're taking the other side. I mean, to that point, we do serve them. We serve our clients, but in doing so, we are also serving our tenants to a degree, so that they remain good tenants, so that they having a good experience. So I don't want to sit here and make it sound like, it's me against you. And we're talking about people. Yeah, we're talking about people who innately do this. They think that everybody in the world should be serving them, and they're very demanding, right? And so we try to be very professional, and we try to give people the same types of responses no matter who they are, right?
No, we don't try. We actually do, because I don't think there's something we both say commonly that is they didn't say that. Like John told you that they'll come to me saying John said this, blah blah blah. Nick said this, or someone else on my team said this, and I'll just be like, no, they didn't say that.
They didn't say that
because I know they didn't. They
never said that
because we have very
we're so consistent
with what we say, and a big one is you avoid engaging with unnecessary drama. You completely ignore things that do not, like, your relationship with the tenant is to enforce a lease or to whatever that lease related thing is. Everything outside of that, you just ignore. You just don't even answer it, right? So yeah, just make sure you stick to your team. If you can't have the confidence that your team or you as yourself will say the exact same things to all the tenants, then you need to beef up this turkey point into beef up a turkey.
And also, pro tip on this as far as communication, two pro tips, and one is a 2024 tip. But first and foremost, if you're having negative communication, if you're having a turkey tenant, any of these people that are doing any of the things that we've just listed in this episode, you should be doing this with all your tenants, no matter what, because you never know when they're going to turn into this. But especially for these tenants, everything should be in writing. I tell these people that do these things that we just talked about have a tendency to want to call you. They always want to call you because they feel like they can get to your heartstrings. They can BS you better. They can give you all their excuses faster, better, whatever than they can on a text message. I tell everybody when they do that, they say, can I call you? Well, in my text message, I say, do you need to, or can you just tell me right here, right now, what it is you need so we can keep it in writing? And then when they call me, I listen to them, I answer their question, and then I said, by the way, this is the reason why I wanted you to keep this in writing was specifically for you and I to protect ourselves so that we can have this communication documented. So yes. When you have this concern next time, I would appreciate if you just text it to me so that we can have this communication in writing. Because right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off the phone with you and I'm going to reiterate everything we've talked about in a text message and send it to you. And I'd rather not waste my time doing that. You could have just texted me and then, you know what I mean? I don't say that to people. But the point is, I try to get people to understand the reason why we communicate by text and email is to have things documented, period. And as badly as they hate that and they don't want it, it doesn't matter. I try to professionally explain it.
For a long time, right? And a lot of times in rentals, you'll notice even with turkeys or good tenants, that things there's long time periods sometimes between communication. So we see it commonly that one maintenance issue comes up and they're like, well, this is the time to tell you all the things that you promised me you would do 9 months ago over the phone. Or John said he would do this 9 months ago when I moved in. It never got done. Where's it at? And I'm like, I don't even have any documentation of that issue whatsoever. Did you put it in a mail? Did you do all the things you just did for this current issue? And the answer is always no. So it's like it just doesn't happen as well. So documentation is huge.
We tell the same thing to our team members. It's not just our tenants. My team members get phone calls from people or make phone calls to people and do things verbally that we have no documentation of. And then I'm trying to deal with an issue. And one of my team members is telling me, well, this happened or that happened. I'm like, well, I don't see that happened. Well, that's because I called them. Well, I need you to make a note that you called them afterwards then, or reiterate your message so that everybody can see. Now, if you're just the only person managing your own property, then okay, maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe you can count on your memory. But I can tell you what, when you're in a court and you're in a he said, she said situation in a courtroom and you can open up a text message or even not even a text message, even if you can just show that on November 3rd, 2022 at 11:41, after talking to so-and-so tenant, I documented what we said, that court is going to take that as gold. Mm-hmm. That is evidence, even if it's not direct communication.
I think that'll be our final turkey identifier, because that's a very common one these days. Is trying to keep communication undocumented. Like I have had that happen very recently, where it's not just wanting to call you; it's insistence on wanting to call you. It's texting you, saying, "Can you call me? I have questions, or I want to talk about something," which is fine sometimes, but just being insistent about it. I'm not available right now. What do you need? No, I need a call, right? And you talk to them, and they're trying to take advantage of some situation, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to text you all this back. That's exactly how it's going to go. So,
as we
even force some turkeys into requiring them to text you only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the whole he said she said game. We've had some turkeys try to play that. Multiple team members against each other. It's like, all right, well, now you're not going to talk to any of us. Now you're just going to text us.
Mm-hmm. And we're about to get into strategies for dealing with these turkey tenants. And so as we do that, I would say that the important thing is being extremely clear with people and
that is the strategy.
Yeah, keeping everything keeping everything in writing. And what else, Kyle?
Not just keeping everything in writing, having strict, well-defined lease terms, because when issues become big issues, they end up in courtrooms, and if they're not in the lease, then maybe you were enforcing something you couldn't, or maybe your terms didn't define payments or maintenance or guests or inspections. So just make sure it's very well-defined, that your not that your definitions aren't well-defined, but you're very clear that you're going to stick to them, because when you vary from that path and then you've allowed something outside the lease terms for so long, it's hard for them to continue to expect that.
Yeah, so just be consistent.
Yeah, be consistent.
Be consistent with everybody.
And everything in writing, you already said that, but I say it's important because I see it all the time that people make verbal agreements, and I've seen judges say, well, like everything, verbal agreement in Texas is binding. It's like, yeah, it's maybe binding, but it's not very, what's the word? Doesn't hold up very well. You can't prove it. It's hard to prove.
It's harder to prove, yeah.
He said, she said, so.
A lot of these things also, Kyle, can be seen before you put the tenant in there. So we're talking about current tenants right now, but let me tell you, most of this stuff happens during a good screening application process. Like the communication problem we just talked about. I nipped that in the bud right off the bat. And if I got somebody that's constantly calling me and refusing to answer my text message and then picking up the phone and calling me every single time, that tells me a lot about that person. It tells me about how I'm going to have to deal with that person as a tenant. And it helps me in my decision making in screening. And I'll tell
Sometimes,
them.
it's not all. Some people do that just because they want to build a relationship. But yeah. That's usually something.
Yeah, no, there's different reasons why people do that. Some people are just old school. They don't like texting. I mean, I get it. It's not like we're all texting or nothing. That's not what I'm trying to say. These are flags. These are yellow flags that tell you a little bit. Most all these things that we've talked about today, you should be able to identify whether somebody's making late payments beforehand by doing rental verification, right? When you ask people about things on their application and they start giving you excuses immediately, you're going to be able to read between the lines and tell you whether you got an excuse after excuse type of turkey, aren't you? Somebody who's ignoring the rules also usually doesn't follow all the instructions on a detailed application process, right?
Yep.
That's the same kind of person.
Ignoring the rules.
Right. Maintenance avoidance, you're not going to know that really till you go in. Those aren't things you're going to know. The communication thing. So at least those 4 or 5 things, you're going to be able to notice just through that application process before you ever put them in the home.
This is true. Even high turnover of guests, we've questioned before, why a 6-bedroom home is being rented by one person. There's just some things that could lead you into asking the right question, says, who knows? Well, and then all of these things, address them promptly. Prompt response is huge. You let things go on and you think that's, it's an okay, right? You're giving them green light, green flag. So you guys have any other questions about turkeys? What you want to eat for Thanksgiving, or how you identify a turkey tenant that'll gobble up all your money and gobble up all your time. Give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com, and we are out.
Later. Gobble, gobble.